Hello and welcome to the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle. We believe that love and compassion have the power to heal our lives and our world. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing content. And if you'd like to support the podcast, you can go to buymeacoffee.com/love and compassion. Are you struggling with an interracial relationship that other people don't accept, or if you survive or are struggling with intense and traumatic family and relationship challenges, or if you're just someone who has the courage to follow your dreams against all odds. Today, our guest is Annie Waxman, author of Accidental Rebel, My Story of Interracial Love and Loss. In the late 1960s, she was a young white and privileged high school cheerleader who accidentally fell in love with James, the Black star basketball player. This was a time of deep racial tension in the US, and especially in a small town in Kentucky where she lived. Accidental Rebel is a memoir of the journey of their secret relationship, which, when dramatically discovered, changed her life, her family's life, and the small Kentucky town forever. Please join me in welcoming Annie Waxman. Hi, Annie.
Hi there. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you very much for being on the show. We're talking about race relations. You would have thought that it was the 1960s, but I think people still struggle with those relationships. People still struggle with accepting different races, as we see with what's happening in the US. And so I think this conversation continues to be unfortunately timely. I was wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit about how you fell in love with the basketball player and how that impacted your family.
Okay. The story is about race, shame that I was told that I was giving towards the family and the town, and forgiveness. I think forgiveness is also what the story is about, and trauma, young trauma. I was a young girl, very popular in high school, and I did something that my parents did not agree with. I was with a black guy, and they did not know that I was with him. I was sneaking around initially, and then many years later, up in well into my 20s, I was still sneaking around from my family and from them knowing what was going on. I never was raised to talk poorly about people or to make any derogatory comments about anyone. So it was kind of shocking when my father and my mother reacted the way they did when I was caught, really caught, with this black guy. We had gone in a car. I used to meet him in the cemetery. He would run through the back and I would drive through the cemetery, and that's how we would start meeting. Rumors were starting to surface that I was seeing the basketball player. And I didn't even tell my best friend about it, who was also a cheerleader. So that indicates that I knew that probably it was going to be problematic for a lot of people. So my father, who was quite powerful and very well known in the state, had police cars following me. And they followed me to that area of town, and we had gone into a house there. And we were together. It was kind of the first time we'd been able to be together in actually a real location, though we did go down to an old stone church that was way out in the country at times and meet there. So my father was knocking at the door, and I told James to run because everybody was saying, your father's out there, I don't know, he looks crazy. And so long story short, I told James to run. He ran out the back door, and I gathered myself calmly and went and opened the door, and my father threw me out of the house down the stairs, the concrete stairs. There must have been about 10 of them. And at that time, my father who unfortunately was a philanderer a bit. He and his girlfriend were with him, and she spit on me. And my father got me in the car and drove me home, where we lived in a very nice subdivision in that small town, and pulled me out of the car and said, "Tell your mother you've been with the N word," which was used, back then. So this is kind of the journey that I was on. I was 16, and a lot happened to me that evening, July 26th, 1969. And every year I think about that day and what happened to me, and that was 57 years ago. So I felt it was important to write this book and get my story out there, and maybe it might show some other interracial couples what other couples went through to maybe make it a little bit easier for them, though I'm not sure it's really that easy at all still.
I was thinking about what you said in terms of like my parents hadn't really said anything until I was dating someone, right? And
Yes,
so I was thinking people don't believe that they're racist until somebody wants to join the family of maybe a different race, and then that really kind of shows you how you really feel, right? Um,
exactly.
did James experience the same thing with his family in terms of him dating somebody white?
No. Now, my father had out that he was going to kill him. So
Oh
he
wow.
hid out for quite a while. But his family did not have a problem with it as far as I can really remember. I
Yeah.
think that there were other people in the Black community, older people, that
Mm,
had a problem with it and thought that, we should stick with our own kind, which was the term
yeah.
used, but not like what my parents did. And that's just a very small slice of the story of what happened to me. And I don't really know how far you want me to go with it.
It's as far as you want to go. I mean, it must have been really difficult for you to continue the relationship because obviously you continued it because you ended up getting married. So take me to the next stage in terms of what made you want to continue forward. Was it your love? Was it just the need to prove everyone right? Or was it maybe a little bit of both?
It was a little bit of both. Yes. We'll show you. You
Yeah.
think we went through all of that and it's going to end? And really, the problem with that is that then I didn't really, and he didn't either, we didn't really realize we weren't really good partners together.
Because you were 16.
I was 16,
Yeah,
but
that's young.
we
Yeah.
forged on. We were together we were 30 when we split up. It was very traumatic time. I had been put in a psychiatric ward for a week. My father,
Oh,
he shot at me with a gun, and
wow.
I was being choked. And then the whole town was coming together and coming to the house and telling me I'd shamed the family and shamed everyone. And my body was supposed to have been at the funeral home. A small town, rumors can swirl. And
Wow.
that's really what was happening. But I was pretty popular, and he was as well, but not on the same outgoing, let's say, level.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very sorry that you had to go through that. That must have been so difficult to feel like everyone's against you, right? You were only 16, you were only following your heart, and had people not judged, they probably would have evolved as it would have had, right? But people's fears and their prejudices are always make things worse. Did you end up staying in Kentucky or did you end up going somewhere else
No,
just because it was
no,
so difficult? Yeah.
no, I did not end up staying. I was sent away to a Catholic boarding school for bad girls my senior year in high school. And unfortunately, he had to stay. He could not leave. He was not of wealth or anything. So he had to endure staying in the town. So I have a lot of empathy for what he went through,
Yeah.
ending up with this white girl with the dad and this, to this day, I
Mm.
have a lot of empathy for him.
So when you were sent to that home for girls, was it for your last year
Year,
of high school?
my
And then,
senior year in
so
high school.
then were you able to come home and then,
Then I came home, and I tried to go away to college somewhere else, and
Mhm.
I didn't get in. So I had to be in Kentucky.
Mm,
But I got into the school furthest away from home.
mm,
So I was happy about that. I kind of hated my parents at that time for
mm.
what they did to me, really.
How was your ex-husband's family? Did you spend any time with them? Or you,
I only met them once.
even though you were married for a
Because you
long
have
time?
to understand that we were secretive
Yeah.
until we got married and we were 26 years old. So my family didn't know. We moved away. We were hiding out in an apartment in a way that it was
Wow.
really,
Must have been tough. Yeah.
it was, and that's when I got to the point where I can't do this anymore. The secrecy was affecting me, and I just could not do it anymore. And so I just one day just told my parents I was with him.
Mm.
I
And
just
so
couldn't
how long were you
hide.
married for? How,
2 years, and we
oh,
lived together 10 or 11 years.
oh, okay. And you weren't anywhere near his family. You moved away somewhere else because you couldn't be
Yeah,
in the
we
town.
moved away because his family lived in the small town. Um, and
Mm,
it was pretty bizarre. How it all happens. But I just needed to release all of this from my
mm.
past. I need to let it go.
Did James ever talk about how difficult it must have been for him to stay behind? The reason why I ask that is because that must have caused a lot of friction in your relationship. It's not like you could both freely be able to be yourselves. That's a lot of pressure to put in a relationship, especially a young relationship.
Exactly. You know what? He was pretty closed down.
Mm,
And I think that he dealt with his anger of the situation by drinking too much.
mm,
And I think really that's where some of his alcoholism stemmed from. I'm not saying he's like that now,
yeah, of
but because we all change.
course.
He was never very communicative. When we left Kentucky, when we were 24, even moving to California, he did not ever really feel comfortable holding my hand or being close with me out in public. It was just something that I don't think he could ever get over. I think he was had some issues with his blackness being with me that I didn't even see at the time, but having written the book and looked back on the years, I really I feel sorry for him, really, that he had to
Mm.
endure, that we both had to endure what we did.
Yeah, it's so difficult. I have friends who are LGBTQ, and my friend can't go with her partner to some countries. They will get hurt if they're holding hands walking down the street. What kind of fear must be going through you that you're so bothered by love? It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
Have you ever been able to have a conversation with family members now that are able to look in retrospect back, or do they still hold some of the same beliefs?
Well, my parents have passed, and that's when I wrote the book. I did not want to
Mhm.
write the book while they were
Mm,
alive.
fair. Yeah, fair.
Yeah, I didn't want to do that. Believe it or not, no one really ever said anything about what happened that day,
Wow.
except my dad when I was in my 50s and I was divorced. looked at me and he said, you know, that never should have happened that day. And I looked at him and I was shocked. And I said,
Wow.
no, you're right. It shouldn't have. And that's the only thing that was ever said about that. In the 50s and 60s, we were brought up like there was a code. You know, don't say what's going on in your
Mhm.
family. You know, what will the neighbors think? It was
Yeah.
truly, and they were a product of that. And
Mhm.
I forgave them. For me, it was forgiveness for them because I know they regretted it. And is such a small portion of the very traumatic things that happened that evening with both my parents and with me. But I feel like they just kind of did the best they could. And they were in this. My mother was European. She was brought over from the war as a war bride in World War II. My dad was a pilot. And so it was like it was almost drawing attention to herself as well, because she
Mhm.
was trying to fit into this small community. And then so I go and do this, and then there's focus on her as well as the family. And it was a different time. I wish it was a little more different than we see these days. But yeah, my sisters have not been comfortable with me with this book. They don't like speaking ill of the dead, is what the comment was. But my parents and I were close in the end, and I have forgiveness for them. That's really what I choose to remember. But it happened. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I had to speak about that about them, but my sisters are not comfortable with any of this and have not read the book.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
we are very close. It's not something we talk about.
Yeah. It's interesting how that happens, right? We tend to censor ourselves, but it actually prevents us from really being truly close. In speaking about those instances, you're not speaking ill of the dead, you're sharing your story. Now, your
Exactly.
parents' perspective of that story might have been different. It might have
Yes.
been through their lens. It
Yes.
doesn't mean that you are saying something negative, but we have that viewpoint that the kindest thing to do is to just censor ourselves or mute ourselves. But that
Let it
doesn't,
lie. Just
yeah,
let
but
it
that's
lie.
not compassionate to
What
ourselves.
I could do.
Yeah.
I've been in therapy 16 years.
Yeah.
This trauma that I went through has affected every decision I've ever made in my life.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Every decision,
Mhm.
except for now.
Yeah. So I want to go back to you get married, right? You're together for a number of years. Obviously, there's alcoholism.
Infidelity from him.
Oh, okay. It must have been difficult to make the decision to separate given how hard you work to be together, right? Can you walk me a little bit through that process of having to make the decision to let him go without feeling like, well, they won, they were right?
Yes. Yeah, boy, did not want to do that. Did
No.
not want to prove that they were right, so
Mhm.
to speak.
Yeah.
We got married. And I don't think he really wanted to get married. I think we were kind of, well, okay, now we need to get married to finish
Mm.
this. And he was not a good communicator.
Mhm.
So he was pretty shut down. So there was never really an easy, after all those years together and living together, he was never really a great communicator. So when it happened that my father, believe it or not, said that he would pay for the wedding. Now,
Oh,
this was years
yeah.
later.
Wow.
That's why I'm saying people can change.
Hmm. That's
People,
important.
if you want to change, you can change.
Hmm.
So he ultimately got us on this roller coaster of getting married. Okay, well, now you got to get married. And I think that kind of made him feel better to know
Mm,
that, okay, well, I did this, but now they're getting married. We can let it all lie and it's over. And you know what?
yeah.
He was exactly like my father. I married my father. He was an
Mm,
alcoholic. He was
mm,
a mean alcoholic and he was not
mm,
very communicative. My father was working all the time. He was never home. I mean, so um, I married my father, and I realized after I did that, I knew when I was standing there at the altar, I knew that this is not going to work, but we had to finish it to move forward.
It's so interesting that we tend to be attracted to people like our parents. And the theory behind that is in order for us to address our trauma, right?
Yes,
Sometimes if we can't address it with our parents, we'll address it with our partner.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about forgiveness because it's very, very important. What got you to the point that you were able to forgive your parents and also your partner with whom you divorced?
You know what? I was raised by a European mother
Mm,
in a small town, manners, treat people kindly. I mean, it was ingrained in me. And I did not want what happened to me. And I guess at that time that I felt I had brought to the family and broken up the family, so to speak. I
mm,
didn't want to be the cause of that. So I myself, okay, when you go through something as traumatic as that, you either move forward and become stronger or you fall within yourself. And so I wasn't made of that stock and I got stronger and I just said, I have to keep the family together. We have to be together. And so I just went through years. I had not had therapy. I just ignored it. I often probably drank and smoked pot to deal with some of the trauma,
mhm,
anything to really not dig in there. And so I forgave everybody.
mm.
And I think it's okay. And I feel good that I did that. But I've had a lot of therapy.
Yeah, therapy is very good.
And it's gotten me to where I am today. And it's gotten me to the point where I could write this book.
Yeah. As you were going through therapy, were there ever any parts where you felt like you had to forgive yourself?
Yes. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Let me see if I can think of what that was. I wasn't really an activist, when I was young. I didn't really plan to be a rebel, so to
Mm,
speak. And so it was truly accidental,
yeah.
forging forward with this mantra, interracial couples can make it and we can all be together and it'll work out. So I think that I decided that it was okay for me to forgive myself for kind of creating a possibly unhealthy situation with him.
Yeah.
I was a part of how unhealthy it was. I'm not throwing it all on him. I had a lot to do with that too. It was like in Kentucky, it was like 1967 before they even took interracial marriages off the books of being illegal. And this was
Mm,
69 when this happened to me. This was very close to when I was going through this, that there were still things like that on the books. And there was that case with Virginia versus Loving, and it was a white man and a black woman who
mm,
had gotten married and were taken out of their homes and put in jail because they had an interracial marriage, and that's what Loving versus Virginia was, and that was in 1967.
Oh, well.
So when you think back about what was really going on just around that time that I was doing this, you can kind of think about the South and what people were really thinking and
Yeah,
what
of
my
course.
family was thinking.
Hmm. Yeah, they must have felt a lot of pressure in terms of the law, which
Yes,
obviously made it difficult. And it's so interesting when you think about the situation now. We went from legally overt racism to covert racism and back to overt again. Right?
yes.
It seems to me like we're back to overt, right? I'm curious as to your thoughts about what's happening in America right now with all the ICE raids, and if you have seen some shifting in terms of the racism you experienced. Has it gone underground or does it just look different?
Well, I'm in California, which
Mm.
is a wonderful state and a democratic state. And so we don't see as much here, but I do know in Kentucky, because I still have my best friend that lives there, and I do still have relatives there that have never said one word to me about what happened to me. It's like it
Mhm.
never happened. I think that with race, I think right now it's gotten a little worse. I think there's less tolerance for people that are different. I know in this state, or people that we associate with, wherever they are like-minded like we are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hate going on right now.
Yeah. Which you would have figured since the 1960s we would have learned. Right? It just went underground, right? And this is why I think this conversation is so important. You dared to share your own story, even though it made people uncomfortable. Now, granted, I mean, I can totally understand you wanting to protect your parents to some extent, right? But at some point, you do have to own your story, because if you don't share those stories, then we can't look at ourselves as a humanity. And that's the thing. People don't want to do that. They're like, let it lie, don't say anything, hushity
Right.
hush. And the reason being is then you can't confront the truth. You can't be uncomfortable. And then you can't be forced to change. And the fact that since the 1960s, we're still facing racism and all these other isms in a very different way, but still they're there. I think
Yes,
it's disheartening. And at the same time, it's a call to change. It forces us to change.
exactly. It's pretty disturbing. Exactly.
Yeah. But I think the challenge is we have to look at ourselves.
I agree.
And that's probably the most difficult part of it, right? Like you were talking about your family. You said that there is no vocalizing of any racism, right? We like
No,
everyone
no.
until there could be somebody who joined your family of a different race. And then all of a sudden, everything that you
Okay.
said you believe in goes to the
Yeah.
crapper. And I think that is what we're seeing today with those raids, right? You see a lot of what I call lateral violence,
Yes.
other people of the same ethnicity signing up to be in ICE, right? Deport other people of their same color.
Yeah.
And that's like, wow,
They're
that's
also being lured financially.
true,
Yeah.
true,
Yes. They're
true.
being lured
Yes.
financially as well.
And that is a very, very common strategy. I was born in Peru and
Oh,
I came to Canada when I was 10.
uh-huh.
And in Peru, the corruption was more overt. And all these politicians would go to the poorest parts and they would go and say, you know what, we're going to feed you, give me your vote. And then every year, without fail, it was the same thing. And then they would vote for them and then the people would not do anything, right?
Yes.
And so it's interesting how we've created this world where people are oppressed economically, then the
Yes.
incentive is economic so that you can then
Yes.
oppress your brother,
Yes.
which
It's
is,
very common in Latin America. My son actually lives in Latin America.
yeah,
And so, yes, it's
yeah.
very common. Yeah.
And you know what? The other interesting thing, and then I want to go back to your story.
Yeah,
The other
no.
interesting thing, too, is one of the biggest things that I hear from the Hispanic community about why they are so anti these other Democratic politicians is that they're so afraid of socialism. And I've had this conversation before, but the truth of the matter is, when I was in South America, the governments tried to pass off communism as socialism. And so what would happen was that the governments would take all of the resources and then they would parse it out. So nobody had. It was like people would have to do lineups for food. They had to do lineups for resources. You would have like lights out and all of these other things. So people associate that with socialism.
Yes.
And they think that's socialism. But what you're really asking for is a democratic socialism, which is no one gets left behind. You share the resources. That doesn't mean the resources are going to be taken by the government as it was in Latin America. People that were enjoying all the resources was the government.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. And so people are afraid of socialism, but that was not socialism. It was sold as socialism.
I think a lot of the Hispanic community, certainly I know quite a few that voted for Trump that were men that would not vote for a woman ever, ever.
Fair.
Now, it's interesting, though, Mexico has a female president, but they would not vote for a woman. And some of the women felt that they would be better off. And so now everybody regrets it. Everyone I've talked to has said, and we're like, didn't you listen to what the words were from this person? So here we are.
And I think that's where our own isms come up, right? When we immigrated to Canada, we came, quote unquote, the right way, which means we paid $20,000. We had all our medicals and everything in order to come to Canada. We had to have skills. And so we came the right way. And then there's people that came in different ways, right? So there was refugee people that came and got a whole bunch of things for free. And my parents, I think to some extent, resented that because they fought so hard. And then you've got people, we never knew anybody, but you got a lot of people in the US that cross the border illegally.
Yes.
And so the desire to punish, the desire to say, well, I came the right way, you should have come the right way, therefore, but not taking into consideration that they might not have had the resources or the way to be there.
That's what's happening here. Other people have said that. Well, we came the right way. So they're going to come in and take our jobs.
Yeah. It's that zero-sum game that we've been taught. It's that everything is limited, like even, and if you think about, I don't know if you've ever heard the rhetoric of white supremacy.
Oh, yes.
Really interesting. The rhetoric of white supremacy is that lack. So even though white men right now run the world, there's always, we're going to be the lesser race. We're going to lack. There's not enough for us. All these people are taking our jobs. And what is obviously being seen in the US is that nobody wants those jobs.
So ridiculous.
It's that rhetoric of there's not enough, even though white people are the ones who have had the most power.
Exactly.
So it's this fear of not enough, this fear of lack, the fear of the other, that has perpetuated and has made our world worse.
Yeah.
Not better. Worse.
Not better. Right.
Not better. Absolutely not.
No. Not better.
It's crazy. It is.
Yeah, we're pretty messed up here right now.
Yeah. My hope is that as your book, Accidental Rebel, and I want to get back to it, it's showing who we've been. Is that showing the kinds of things that we'd allowed? Because in our family, there is that same thing of Cosa Nostra, right? We don't tell anybody else, but that's lonely and isolating and oppressive, right?
Exactly.
So being able to share your story is really important. Are you in good terms with your ex-husband now? Are you better terms?
I have not seen him since 1980.
Oh, okay. So it's been a while. Yeah.
And he does live only 11 miles from me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But, LA's so huge.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Though I do know a little bit about him now. I think he's changed. I've been told.
Throughout this journey, there must have been an element of you that was like, F you, I'm going to do this because you said. So there's a level of You were talking about the rebel, right? The
Yes.
desire to do and to follow your heart and to make decisions for your own, which can be isolating sometimes, right? Because people are so desperate to belong, they'll go with the current
Yeah.
against themselves.
Yeah.
What do you feel led you to keep going in the face of that, all of that resistance?
You
And has
know,
that helped you in other areas?
I became a little hard
Mm,
and brazen
mm,
also. And I'm wondering if somehow it fed me a little bit.
mm,
I think on some level, I was getting back at my dad for never really being there and
mm,
always drinking and not accessible. And I just really became very brazen. I did things that I think about now that scare me, that I can't
mm,
believe I did that. But it's in some level, it empowered me
mm.
to move forward without a care.
Yeah.
I really feel I was doing that in college. I was hitchhiking and to other
Mm.
states. And I mean, I was not that girl when I was growing up.
Oh, wow.
Not that girl. Just sweet, kind, never did anything that my parents would react to. I mean, it was spare the rod, spoil the child then. We were
Mm.
whipped, and
Yeah.
I became a real rebel, kind of the
Mhm.
black sheep of the family, so to speak, which actually my father was in his family.
Mm. Interesting.
Yes,
Mm.
yes, yeah.
But there's an element of freedom, is there not? Like a small element of freedom in the sense that sometimes you can get so trapped with what people think you should do or, fit in this box and do what everybody is
Uh-huh.
doing. There might be an element of freedom in going against the current and doing what it is that you would want to do instead. Has it served you in other areas of your life or has it been a hindrance?
Um, Well, my husband now calls me and my sisters the hard ass sisters because we had this happened with me that affected them.
Yeah.
And we grew up with an alcoholic parent that
Mm.
eventually was not there, but still, I do think it has benefited me, actually.
Mm.
I'm considered pretty strong. I am strong. I'm outspoken,
Mm.
and I react to comments that are made that I think are not appropriate or are mean-spirited. But I'm not sure I would have been that girl if that didn't happen to me in 1969. But I think it actually has served me well and made me the person I am today. And I actually like who I am.
Mm. Mhm. I
I'm
like that.
kind of like, well done, Annie. You got through, you made it, you wrote a book, you told your story. And now I kind of feel like it was such a cathartic experience. I've been able to kind of just go, okay,
So the
you've,
writing of the book helped you sort of unload a lot of that, the trauma that
oh,
you experienced. Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes, it did.
What is the message that is that you're trying to communicate?
I think
Mhm.
it's just an important slice of history, this story of an interracial relationship or anyone that just wants to know anything about the past with race.
Mm.
And I've been told it's a really worthwhile read,
Mm.
and it's also an Audible. Yeah.
And it can be found on Amazon.com.
Yes, it
Yeah.
can be found on Amazon in hardback, paperback,
Mm.
Kindle, and Audible.
Do
Yes.
you have a website?
Wow, someone else asked me that. I'm just an old chick that wrote a book,
Awesome. Well, you can find it through
74.
all the major publishers then.
Yes, Barnes
Wonderful.
and Noble.
Last question. What's your definition of self-love?
Okay, self-love. I think it's knowing yourself is self-love. I was thinking about this. Accepting yourself is self-love, and continuing to work on yourself
Mm,
is
mm,
self-love.
mm.
To be
Yeah.
a better human in this crazy world we're in now,
Yeah.
with compassion and care for our fellow man. That's what I think. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your story, for that little piece of history, and for the mirror that your story is holding of how much we have changed and at the same time haven't changed. And the hope is that we're able to look at ourselves not with rejection, but with compassion and say, you know what, that's who we've been, but I'm not choosing that anymore. I'm willing to change. And I can change not by hating myself, by having compassion for who I've been and, who I choose to be. So
Exactly.
thank you, Annie, so much for coming to the Love and Compassion podcast with Giselle.